Welcome everyone. Today I will do my very best to answer some of the very obscure questions in Classroom of the Elite. Have you wondered about those? What's Koinji's past? Why is Koinji so powerful? Why isn't Ainokoji able to figure him out? Why was White Room shut down for almost a year? Why was Ainokoji sent to a different place than others? I believe everything I said is connected, and in this video I will explain it to the best of my ability. Let's start with Koinji. So his character from the start is shown as a mysterious guy who's powerful, but we don't really have an idea about how powerful he is, which in the plot of Classroom of the Elite is unusual. We got to know the power level of every other character soon after they were introduced, but in this case, as of right now, half of the Classroom of the Elite is completed and this dude is still a mystery. Almost like a big reveal that's waiting to happen, and trust me, it will be a big reveal as you will see why in some minutes. So as we went forward, we got some really interesting information on him by Ainokoji, one of which is this scene, which anime totally left out, and I think it should have been included. Here's how it goes. It's the time when Ainokoji, Sakura and Koinji get together in a group and start finding an area for the class to camp in the uninhabited island exam in volume 3. Ainokoji, Sakura and Koinji were just walking looking for spots with Koinji in the very front, and that's when Koinji stopped and asked both Ainokoji and Sakura, "What do you think about this place? What do you see when you look around?" To which Ainokoji replied that there wasn't anything unusual, and Sakura also couldn't seem to notice anything, to which Koinji replies that it's okay and there is no need to worry since common folks are simple after all, and he starts to move. Now Ainokoji feels that there is some meaning to him saying that and takes a handkerchief from Sakura and ties it to the branch nearby, just in case. And some chapters later, we get to know that Ainokoji was still thinking about the words from Koinji earlier, even after Koinji retired from the exam. So what we have now is that Ainokoji decided to go off to that place again, and Sakura volunteered to come with him. Thanks to the handkerchief, they arrived at that place, and then as they began searching around the area full of bushes to look for something, anything that Koinji was indirectly mentioning, they, or rather Sakura, finally stumbled upon it. They saw a different variety of green leaves sprouting from the bushes with some yellow paths peeking through them, and to their surprise it was manually cultivated corns, which would be very helpful in this exam. Ainokoji mentioned that these corns were covered from every side with bushes, so it was hard to notice them, and goes on to say that Koinji did notice it, but because of his personality he didn't want it to help them directly, which is why he gave both of them hints. The reason I think this incident was important is because it shows that Koinji is really something. He manages to notice something that even Ainokoji missed at first, and that in itself is not a small thing. And this was just the beginning. Time and time again we saw Koinji's brilliance that sometimes even surpassed Ainokoji. And as if all that wasn't enough, finally in the latest volume, which as of right now is Year 2 Volume 6, Ainokoji said it himself very clearly that Koinji is the only student in the class that he cannot seem to figure out at all. So here it begins, the Koinji White Room theory. Because Koinji have unmatched abilities for a normal student that sometimes even surprised Ainokoji, I think it's fair to assume that he did have a curricular similar to White Room. It would make far more sense to think that way instead of just brushing it off as a natural born genius, as we do have one, and even though Ainokoji acknowledges her, let's be honest, he wouldn't have much of a problem defeating her if he goes all out. But this man is different. Still, even as we say that his curriculum was off or similar to White Room, how will it fit with the other things about the closure of White Room for over a year and about sending only Ainokoji away from the White Room? To answer all of these questions, now I will weave a story around all the facts we know from the story, along with logical conclusions to the situations that arise to explain all the above questions. Of course, the story wouldn't be 100% right, but I believe it could turn out to be right in some aspects. So here we go. First things first, we know White Room is strictly hidden from the government since it's unethical, and we also know from the novels that it needs a huge amount of money in order to function. So that means that White Room needs a sponsor who should be quite rich to support them regularly and who would be willing enough to invest in an illegal project without getting detected while transferring a lot of money, which means there is a person who is ready to take all those risks. But why? Why would a person who would have a lot of money to support a project like this would do this. A huge amount of risk to career, hiding the transfers of money and all of it without any profit? No, that cannot be possible. No businessman would ever invest in something without any profit. So that begs the question, what is the profit the investor is getting? The answer is the results of the project. I believe Professor Anakoji, not to be confused as Kiyotaka, but his dad, was asked by this person or sponsor or however you would like to call him. Actually, for the rest of video, let's call him the aristocrat. So the aristocrat asked Professor Anakoji to do research to make curriculums that will help children to be perfect in everything, and he agreed, or it could be that they both were friends and mutually agreed on this. And that aristocrat has to be super rich to support the project, and it is to be noted that he must be super influential to buy a place for the structure of White Room in a secluded place, which is an island. How do we know it's an island? That's because Anakoji mentioned walking around the sea when he was transferred from White Room. And also, if you want to hide from government, then a private island is the way to go. So the aristocrat might have had a private island that he gave to Professor Anakoji. And guess who in Classroom of the Elite has the strength similar to a White Room student and happens to be from a very rich family? Your guess is as good as mine. Now, if that is true, then how did it connect to the closure of White Room for 1 year? Well, for that we have to go to Koenji's past, and since there isn't much info on that, I will split the guesses in different timelines. So here goes. There was this aristocrat who was very rich and possibly the president of a very big company, and he was planning to have a child to be the heir of everything he have built. But he didn't want his child to be inferior to anyone. He wanted his child to be perfect. One reason for that could be that he had a first child and he didn't turn out to be perfect to his liking, and that's why he wanted to make sure he would have a perfect child the second time so that he could pass it on to someone capable. Or another reason it could be that he just simply wanted his first child to be the best, and for that matter he contacted his old friend, or maybe to him just another researcher, Professor Anakoji, and asked him if somehow they could do that, to which Professor Anakoji said that it's possible and came up with the concept of White Room. Or maybe by the time Professor Anakoji was already involved in this. To not take any risks on the child, they have to practice it on some other children, and if it succeeds the way they want, then they would do it on the aristocrat's child. Now it may be noted that there's a chance that the aristocrat hid the reason he wanted Professor Anakoji to do that, and all he wanted was just to see the results and then apply to his child without Professor Anakoji noticing. Although it was illegal to do that, aristocrat didn't care about it. He just wanted results, and that's how White Room was started 20 years ago. And after 3 generations of White Room, when they started to see a little bit of results, the aristocrat put his own son in the curriculum, but not in the White Room facility. He did it separately, like in his house or some other place. Everything went great according to him, but what he didn't expect it was that the same year Professor Anakoji also put his son in the facility. So as the time went on, the aristocrat was very happy with his son's result. His son seemed to surpass everyone, and that was when he noticed that there was this child in the White Room whose results were just on another level. That kid even surpassed the aristocrat's child. Even if it was by the slimmest of margins, the aristocrat couldn't bear it. How a common child was able to surpass his son. He wanted his son to be the best and perfect, but that kid named Kiyotaka was a hurdle in his way. Now, why did it take so much time for the aristocrat to notice if Kiyotaka was that good? Well, for that, let's say there's a person who works in the White Room, and that person knows both Professor Anakoji and the aristocrat, and that he's the one who brings the results from White Room to the aristocrat. So what happened was, somehow this person got to know about what the aristocrat was doing, that is using the results on his own son, and he told Professor Anakoji about it. And Professor Anakoji didn't have much problems with it because he was getting a lot from the aristocrat in return, and that he couldn't say anything to him, so he just let it all play out. But what he did was he hid Kiyotaka's result from the aristocrat, deleting his performance from the report that the aristocrat received. But years later, the aristocrat got a wind of it, and it's possible that it was from the same person who brought the reports. Now, why would someone betray Professor Anakoji by mentioning Kiyotaka's existence? Well, if the person decided to stop working for Professor Anakoji because he didn't agree with all of this, then why not? That person maybe came to his senses and wanted all of it to stop to save children's life, and that's why he went to the aristocrat and told everything to him, because he knew that once the aristocrat knew that there is someone who's more powerful than his own son, he would stop the White Room. And we know one person who initially worked with Professor Anakoji and then left him, and also that person happens to be sympathetic to White Room student Kiyotaka, and that person in this series is Chairman Sakayanagi. It's worth to mention that it's also quite possible that instead of two, there were three friends, Professor Anakoji, Chairman Sakayanagi, and the aristocrat. They may be all agreed on this, but Chairman Sakayanagi left after something happened and he became the chairman of Advanced Nurturing High School. But later down the line, he decided to stop the White Room for good, and he went to the aristocrat and told him about Kiyotaka's existence, thinking that it would put an end to all of this. But to his surprise, the aristocrat ordered to get rid of Kiyotaka, since it's the only way he would be sure that his son would be the best. Now, Chairman Sakayanagi, who wanted to save everyone's life in White Room, instead put Kiyotaka's life in danger. That's not what he wanted, so what he did was he went back to White Room and warned Professor Anakoji about it. It's possible he didn't mention that he was the one who leaked the info, so that Professor Anakoji didn't hold a grudge for him. So Professor Anakoji isn't sure if it was the Chairman Sakayanagi or someone else, but that didn't matter for now. They had to hide Kiyotaka somewhere where no one could find him as soon as possible, since the aristocrats' men might be on their way to take Kiyotaka, and both of them decided that it would be good to send him away from the White Room to Professor Anakoji's butler's house, and that was why Kiyotaka was sent off from the White Room. And as to why it was closed for over a year is maybe because the aristocrat wasn't convinced that they got rid of Kiyotaka, so they checked everywhere for him, and maybe the aristocrat ultimately decided to stop further research in White Room. And it would have come as a shock to Professor Anakoji since it was his life's work. He couldn't stop it, but for him to continue it, he would have to get money from somewhere else since the aristocrat backed down. And that was why White Room was closed for over a year. That is, supplies were cut off and there was a constant searching for the person named Kiyotaka. At this point, Chairman Sakayanagi knew that even though the aristocrat backed down, Professor Anakoji wouldn't stop. He would find some other way to continue. He didn't want it to continue everyone's suffering, so he decided that he should save Kiyotaka while he still can. And he told Professor Anakoji's butler to mention Advanced Nurturing High School to Kiyotaka and told him to have Kiyotaka apply for the school. So Chairman Sakayanagi was behind all of this. It makes much more sense than thinking that one day Chairman Sakayanagi just so happens to be sitting in his office and he just so happens to see a form of admission that belonged to Kiyotaka, recognized him and accepted him. Also, one of the reasons why the aristocrat backed down could be that his son was now old enough for high school, and for his ultimate test, he stopped his curriculum and challenged him to graduate from Class A from this Advanced Nurturing High School in order to receive his inheritance. And since there was no need for further results, he stopped the White Room from his side. Moving on, after some time when Professor Anakoji solved all the problems with continuing the White Room, he went to his butler's house, and to his horror, Kiyotaka was gone. And to add more to it, Kiyotaka took admission in the same school as the aristocrat's son, Rokusuke. If somehow the aristocrat got the wind that Kiyotaka is still alive, he would definitely try to get rid of him. So more than starting the White Room again, he wanted Kiyotaka to come back to save Kiyotaka's life. Kiyotaka, his son, and the masterpiece of White Room is Professor Anakoji's life's effort, and he wouldn't let it all go to waste so easily. So he's trying his best to get Kiyotaka expelled and take him back to White Room to save him from the aristocrat. And that is the answer to all the questions. The reason why Kiyotaka is having a hard time figuring out Koinji and why his abilities are top notch is because he's also one of the best students from the White Room curriculum. It is possible that they were separated by only the slimmest of margins, as foreshadowed in Volume 8. Now, sure, you would think that this is a long shot and how I came up with it. Well, I had this theory in mind for the longest of time, almost before the release of Year 2 Volume 5. I didn't share it because I was just waiting for a few hints from the official volumes. And I did find something in Year 2 Volume 6. You remember the unknown visitor, right? Here's what he said. Once Sakishiro is gone, all that remains is to eliminate the White Room students and peace will return. I thought you might be making that mistake, so I came here to advise you. And from what I'm understanding here, he's implying that White Room is not the only enemy Kiyotaka has. And if the above theory is true, then we have our answer and it would make sense. So who would be the visitor, you might ask? Well, only 3% know about Koinji and Kiyotaka business. So you might say that it's someone sent by Chairman Sakayanagi. Could be, but I believe I will need to dig more into it. For reference, it is possible that the person who brought the reports was someone who works for Chairman Sakayanagi and not himself. And there's also the possibility of Koinji's brother existing. There are different identities which would satisfy the theory, and there are a lot of possibilities since we don't have much conclusive evidence to narrow it down to one. And it would need a separate video on its own to answer, which I will do. I thought about it and I came up with 2 or 3 possibilities of who the visitor could be. I will share them in a separate video, and also there's more to this theory than what is in the video. I couldn't fit it all in one, so I will make another. Keeping that aside, let me know what you think about the theory. And my question to you all is, do you think that bits of this theory are very likely to happen? If so, then which ones? Let me know in the comments down below. And I will see you soon in the next video. Have a nice day ahead.